Well, welcome to this week's Coffee Club. I'm Bill Leckie, and this week a little upgrade alongside me. Robert Greaves taking a welcome break, or maybe we got a welcome break from Robert Greaves. Here is Roger Hannah. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning, Bill. It was nice to see Robert last week at the Parthenon in the backdrop. We've got the Colosseum in the backdrop here in Bella Vita this week, and we've still got my most lovely selection of cakes, so I'm quite glad Robert's got a well-earned break. It allows me to come in and feast on these. Yeah, you can
take these back with you today to the office, because that's what he does every week. People think that we get to share the cakes. I've never seen a cake yet.
A lot of people in the office haven't seen a cake yet either.
So here we are anyway. We need someone to cheer us up, cake, coffee, whatever it is, because Sunday night, Roger, after how well we did in Athens last week, Sunday night was just awful, wasn't it?
It was terrible. You half expected the TV camera to pan round and see wee Bertie Vogts in the home dugout. It was that bad.
It was that bad.
And it's one of these games, ever since Sunday night, I think people have looked to pick flaws in the selection or pick flaws in Steve Clarke's substitutions or what the players did or this guy or that guy. I think it was actually so bad. It's one of those games you probably just need to draw a line under and try and forget as quickly as you can.
The unfortunate thing is, Roger, that's been the story now basically every time we've had to win a game. Yeah. You know, you think about the Czech Republic, Croatia at the first Euros, the Ukraine playoff at Hampden, the Germany game, the Hungary game, and now this week we seem to get to the stage where, right, we've built ourselves up, we've done really well, we've got this far, now we need to go out and perform, and we just don't.
I think we've always been a team though, Bill, and built the manager's image.
Very much so. Stubborn.
He's cautious.
Hard to beat, cautious, yes.
They're hard to beat. The last week exemplified it. We go to Athens, we get a goal, we hang on, it's desperate defending, we get it out our 6-yard box time and again, we carry a wee bit of luck when Tony Ralston puts it on at his own post, great clearance. That was Scotland at the best. But when there's an expectation on us to force the play, to play in the front foot, to go and carry the game to the opposition, we find it difficult. We find it difficult, A, because I don't think that's Steve Clarke's area of expertise.
No, it's not.
But also, we don't have the players. No. We missed Ben Doak, and you know, for a young laddie who's playing on loan in the English Championship, for us to be so reliant on him so soon in his international career, it's quite remarkable.
Well, when you see what Konstantinos Karetsis, 17-year-old, did for Greece when he came on at half time in the first game, everybody was raving about him. We were, Scotland players were, everybody was. And you're thinking, if he plays at Hampden, we might have a problem, and he was absolutely sensational. And that's the whole thing, when you've got a player who can take your team 30 yards up the park and make defenders start to backpedal rather than going at you, which is what he did in Athens, and he just kept doing the same thing at Hampden, and we just never ever looked as if we were going to do anything.
You can compare, you know, they had Karetsis, we didn't have Doak. Even if you look, you know, in the first, I know they left on the bench for the first game, but Pavlidis, the guy who scored the 2 goals at Wembley, he scored a hat-trick in the Champions League this season against Barcelona. He scored against Juventus, he scored against Monaco.
He's a good player.
He's a good player. We don't have anything, you know. Che Adams is doing fine at a mid-ranking team in Italy, but the other strikers, you know, Kevin Nisbet on loan from Millwall to Aberdeen and doing okay. James Wilson, let's hope he has a marvellous career ahead.
He will have, but he's just a boy.
He's just a boy at the minute. Tommy Conway, best thing to say for Tommy is he came on and ran about a bit.
And George Hurst looks as if he could be an asset. But again,
it was a difficult time for him to be thrown into
but
both
teams. I don't think a goal-scoring centre forward, more of a grafting centre forward, the same as Che Adams. I totally get that. I mean,
we need a number 10 and we need a number 9.
There are certain things, and I agree with you on the fact that it's not about team selection. It was just, you know, you could have said, well, we should have played Tierney, or we should have gone 5 at the back. You could have, should have, could have, would have, whatever. I'm with you. I don't think that would have changed things. I would have loved to see. I was really disappointed that Lewis Ferguson got left out after the way he played. I genuinely think Steve Clarke's making a mistake by not using Ryan Christie where he plays for his club, because he looked as if he was a winger who hadn't played in the wing for 9 months, which is what he is. I would have liked to have seen him dropped in beside Billy Gilmour and Lewis Ferguson played again, because I think that's a huge disappointment for the boy after he had done so well. But Steve Clarke being Steve Clarke, and I don't deny the guy his chance at all, was never going to leave out Kenny McLean on the night of his 50th cap.
No, I agree.
That's the way Steve manages.
I agree with you.
And you might think that his loyalty is a strength. Other people might see it as a weakness. I don't know what you think.
But what we need to do is, and I don't know where they come from, I don't have a magic wand, find...
Yes you do, you get that newspaper out every day.
Is he, let's get busy. Even look at the strikers we've got. You know, Che Adams, born in England. George Hurst, born in England.
Yes.
Lyndon Dykes, born in Australia.
Tommy Conway,
you know, born in. Great that they come and play for Scotland, but where are the Scottish, not just strikers, Bill, wingers, number 10s, attacking players? We're not creating any of them. The under-21 team lost 6-1 to Iceland yesterday. There are real problems going forward for the national team. James
Wilson is an outlier in this. He's an old-fashioned centre forward. I think the boy's going to be, if he keeps progressing the way he is, he's going to be a fantastic player. Because he takes defenders where they don't want to go. He can score goals. He can create goals. He's a proper. Again, he's a player who takes the team further up the park. But he is only a kid, and
he's only just turned 18.
Yeah, and he's still at school, you know. So you need to give him a lot. I'm not saying you don't play him, because I would play him now. You know, I would have no worries about playing him now if we had to, in the same way with Ben Doak. Again, he's down the rank as far as Steve's concerned, I would think. You know, and I would imagine if he said that the game in Athens was no time for rookies, I would think he would believe that the World Cup qualifiers is no time for rookies.
Well, the first of the World Cup qualifiers away to Denmark at the start of September can hardly be tougher. When the draw was made, we thought, quite fancy the Greeks. Not sure many of us fancy the Greeks now. So we're going to need to finish first or second in that 4-team group. So we're going to need to get above either Denmark or Greece. To do so, we're going to have to score goals.
I mean, the argument would have been when the draw was made, everybody should be looking to take 6 points off Belarus. If you can get 4 points off Greece, then it's very likely you'll finish second. Now I'm thinking the Greeks will fancy themselves to win the group. Very much so, because they're a coming team. They've got you know, your Pavlidis and your Karetsis and more. You know, Solis and some really good players. Mavropanos at the back, and they will fancy themselves now to win that group. So we are going to have to lift our game. And again, the one thing I would say is we've been good in group stages. That seems to suit us, this sort of getting results from game to game and growing as a group. It's when we get to then I would worry then about a play, because you then get 2 one-off playoffs if you finish second.
Listen, I would take your hand off for a playoff right now, because you look at the Greeks, as we say, Karetsas and Pavlidis. You look at the Danes, you know, Rasmus Højlund and Christian Eriksen from Man United. Mika Biereth, who was once on loan at Motherwell, now tearing it up for Monaco.
And that's a great story, isn't it?
You know, and he's just done fantastically. And I watched the Danes. They eventually lost 5 goals in Portugal last Sunday night. But they were in it right to the very end against a top-level Portuguese side. The Danes and the Greeks will cause us major problems in this group.
Absolutely. We're going to have to raise our game. And it feels as if we keep making strides and then we drop it's like snakes and ladders. We fall all the way back down the ladder when we lose a game like this.
What did you think? I didn't like, great headlines for us, I didn't think it sent out the right message when the manager said he was 75% certain to go after the World Cup campaign. I think that places a seed of doubt in players' minds. It's an added distraction that we don't need. What did you make of the comments?
I felt as if he was playing the SFA a wee bit. I didn't think it was helpful in the least. I think it was, how do we describe this, Roger? Because I like Steve and I want him to stay and I want him to take us to the World Cup. I think it's become too much about what he wants to do. You know, I would love nothing more than Steve Clarke to be our manager at the World Cup next year. But I think ever since the Euros, it's become far less about what Scotland needs and more about what Steve Clarke wants.
You know, if you take this to club level, you're a St Mirren man. Say Stephen Robinson in the month of March tells the St Mirren board, listen guys, I'm going to go in the summer. Then Keith Lasley and Jim Gillespie and all the guys at St Mirren start the process of identifying St Mirren's next manager. Do you think the SFA are currently doing their due diligence on the next Scotland manager? Or is that something the SFA do the morning after Steve closes his desk?
It would be a departure from previous tactics if they were. I mean, I think most people out there would say it's going to be Derek McInnes. That's what people seem to think. Whether Derek McInnes thinks that's another matter, I don't know. He would seem like a kind of natural progression from Steve Clarke. I don't think he plays the game awfully differently. He's got the same pragmatic outlook. Whether or not the SFA are on that case, I don't know, because they'll still be sitting there saying, well, Steve says he's quite happy to be here until the end of his contract. Yeah. So if we get to, now the fact is this is a microwaved World Cup group, isn't it? It used to be over kind of 18 months, now it's over sort of 8 weeks or whatever. It's almost like a mini tournament. And you could be, now 2 things will happen. We'll either be out, 3 things. We'll either be in the World Cup by December, we'll be out of the World Cup by December, or we'll be sitting until March
for the playoff.
Yeah. At which point we'll then have to make a decision whether if we're in or we're out. I don't think it's a healthy situation. I'm not saying they should be cutting Steve's grass and going out and planning, because you never know, we might hit the ground running and win our first 3. We might beat Denmark, Greece, Belarus, and suddenly go 9 points out of 9. We're on our way to America. So
how good would that be?
It would be absolutely sensational. And again, we would be sitting here saying, well, by the way, Steve Clarke's done a magnificent job, hasn't he? But that's the problem, is that every time we think, because I think most people want him to be successful. I know I do, and you do, and Robert does, we've talked about this a lot, but we keep going forward and then suddenly come back to this situation of, is he the right man?
Are we spoiled? Kris Boyd said in our Go Ballistic podcast on Monday, the Tartan Army's been spoiled by the success Steve Clarke's brought, taking the team to 2 Euros, bringing through young players like Doak and Hickey and Gilmer and Patterson and now Wilson and Miller. Should we, and I jokingly touched on Bertie Vogts, mentioned him at the start of the show. You know, you think back to those days, we were drawing in Moldova and drawing with the Faroes, and it was terrible. But also, as he would tell you, beating Holland in the first leg of a playoff. But we beat Greece this week in the first leg of a playoff.
Absolutely.
Are we spoiled? Are our expectations too high?
I think all football fans. I think there's probably 2 types of football fan, aren't there? There's the ones who have been there in Moldova when we were rubbish under Bertie Vogts, and who know that it's more about the journey than the destination. And then there's the fans who get on board when things start going well, and then suddenly we get battered in the Euros and they don't want anything to do with us again. So certainly with Scotland, there's 2 types of fan, I think. I think expectations change. Steve Clarke's talked about this, expectations start, and so they should. You know, if you go from League C to League B to League A, expectations are going to change.
And people want you to stay in League A.
People want you to stay in League A. We've dropped into League B, which is probably where we are. You know, I think that's probably what we are.
I likened it the other day to Livingston. Livingston went from League 1 to the Championship.
I've talked about this before on here,
And then they stay in the Premiership for a period of time, and they fall back to the Championship. But you would think that, certainly Davy Martindale, the majority of Livy fans, are probably realistic enough to know that Livingston can't live their life in the Premiership.
There's no problem about it. I had this conversation with David Martindale a few weeks ago, where he said in the first 2 seasons in the Premier League, fans were like, oh, brilliant, who we got? We've got Rangers, we've got Celtic, we've got Aberdeen. And then in the 3rd season of it, they're going, we're going to get battered by Rangers and Celtic and Aberdeen. What's the point? And home crowds start to drop. Now, this is what happens. If we stay in League A, that's where I want us to be.
Of course.
But if you draw France and Italy and England in a group or whatever it is, and you lose 6 games out of 6, and people and crowds drop again by 5, 6, 7, 8,000, the SFA say, well, this isn't very good. Are we better off in League B, where we're and also where you have that little prize of a playoff up your jumper if you do well, playing against the Czechs and the Danes or whoever, and teams that we've proved that we can just about match. At times, so it's a difficult one. But the thing that really worries me is when we get to chips down time, we're losing games and losing them heavily.
Losing them badly.
Ukraine, Czech Republic, Croatia, Germany, losing them badly.
And we'll lose them in the same way. Looking toothless, looking devoid of any creativity.
Even Hungary was an absolute rope-a-dope, wasn't it? We just fell into a trap where we were so, for players who are very streetwise, players from high level clubs who play at a very high intensity every week, suddenly lost their intensity and lost their way, and that worries me. And you would need to be a heavy duty psychologist to get inside the heads of that dressing room and know why that happens. All I know is it keeps happening, and we can't let it keep happening. On the morning of the game on Sunday, I wrote a little piece for the paper saying that we have to learn from these disappointments. That's the whole thing, is that it's not about getting beaten, it's about how you react to being beaten, and we're not reacting well enough to the last time this happened to us. Anyway, so we talk about something. I was going to say something cheerful. This is actually something. This is something weird I want to talk about. You were talking about playing Denmark.
Playing the Danes in September.
So Kasper Schmeichel has played against Portugal in that two-legged game that the Danes eventually lost, and it means they play us now. He's come back from Portugal to an absolute hammering in a newspaper called Extra Bladet, one of the top newspapers in Denmark. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm the last person to ever criticise another journalist for giving a player a hard time in print, as I have done it many times over the years. But the piece that was written about him has caused such a furore in Denmark that the Players' Union have issued a statement condemning the journalist and the paper. Now, I sat and translated this piece this morning, and the piece itself basically says, time's up for Kasper Schmeichel, 38, being a good goalkeeper, however, it's time to move him on. He's basically saying he's playing a not very good league. We've got a Premier League goalkeeper in Mats Hermansen from Leicester sitting on the bench. We should get him in the team, but it's not happening, and he's not good enough. However, peppered through it is language where the journalist calls him plump, fat, and at one point says, on the third goal, and if I can just about quote this word for word, an excellent goalkeeper catches the ball, a mediocre goalkeeper parries the ball for a corner, our goalkeeper came out and punched it like a child with polio.
Well, listen, it's outrageous. I read the stuff this morning. It is grossly unfair in Kasper Schmeichel,
yes.
But B, it's language that shouldn't be used in newspapers. I mean, I'm quite sure there will be a backlash against the journalist and his newspaper. It's already started by the Danish Players' Union. You know, if the journalist wants to make a case for Kasper coming out the team and Mads Hermansen coming in, which, by the way, I'm not convinced is the way forward, the way he's been shipping goals in the English Premier League. Not. I've actually been impressed by Kasper Schmeichel this season at Celtic. When he signed, I thought he was a sort of stopgap, and he was only coming to Celtic because they couldn't get anybody else.
Absolutely.
You know, they were looking at other lads.
And Rogers knew him from before, etc.
Rogers knew him from before. He's been excellent.
He's a brilliant shot stopper still.
Yeah, he had a difficult game in the Old Firm game before the international break, but he kept a clean sheet in the first game against the Portuguese. He saved Ronaldo's penalty. Now, it's the kind of penalty you would take.
Well,
but he saved it. Still got to get down, go the right way and save it.
I would save.
And, you know, then what hasn't been mentioned is the injury he sustained.
Well, that's the thing as well. He's played on.
He played on. The manager, Ryan Reimer, said he would have taken him off if he had any substitutes left. And after he suffered the injury, he made a save at the end of extra time.
Yeah.
I watched the game, and when he landed, he let out a yell.
It was a proper scream, wasn't it?
You could have heard, you know.
Without TV cameras.
So Kasper Schmeichel has put his body in the line for the national team and does not deserve the level of vitriol and criticism that's been directed to him over there. It's scandalous.
And listen, I don't know if you have. I know that I have wakened up in the morning sometimes having written something in the heat of the moment, and I've gone the next day, I shouldn't have said that. There's one which I don't know if he will be watching this, but back when we lost 6-0 to Holland in the Bertie Vogts playoff, and I wrote something along about Rob Douglas. I didn't think he'd played well for us, and I think I wrote something like, if I could have got him, I would have kicked him up the arse or something, right? And he phoned me the next day, and he was not happy, and he didn't speak to me for a long, long time, and quite deservedly didn't speak to me for a long, long time. And sometimes you write it, and you go, oh, that's going to come back on me. Yeah. And that's in our job. That's what you have to do. If you think you're the big man and you're going to do it, you have to take what comes with it. There's responsibility and there's accountability.
There's a line in the sand.
There's a line in the sand, and when we cross that line in the sand, we get what we deserve for it.
This lad has leapt over it.
Yeah.
Listen, we'll still hear how bad Kasper Schmeichel's injury is. My understanding is there's damage up in the shoulder, no broken bones. There's been an MRI scan. Jamison Salah will start against Hearts on Saturday's Premiership start. There was talk in Denmark Schmeichel could be out to September, could even miss the Scotland game. I believe that has been grossly over-exaggerated.
One would hope not.
I think Celtic would like him to be involved at some stage this season. But listen, we don't get to speak to. We'll speak to Brendan on Friday.
Interesting thing. I mean, Sinisalo, I thought would have been used by now.
Yeah, I thought it would have been used more.
In cup ties, and hasn't been.
Yep. I agree with you.
Which. That's Brendan Rodgers' decision. But when it comes to a time like this, okay, the league is not in jeopardy, but there's still games to be won for them, and we'll now see how. I mean, 3 caps for Finland. He's basically Finland's second goalkeeper. So he was sitting on the bench, game his away. So I couldn't actually tell you how good or bad the boy is.
He's good. I saw him at Ayr United when he was there. He got himself, moves, and he's in at Celtic. They like him for the long term. His lack of usage. Kasper Schmeichel is a big character.
Absolutely.
And some goalkeepers, I think, are happy to be rested for cup games and maybe rested for smaller games. I'm not sure Kasper is. And I think that, Kasper wants to play as much as he can. I think that's maybe, and that's not a criticism in the slightest. At 38, you probably want to play as much as you can. And you see a lot of it with Craig Gordon as well at 42 at Hearts. You've seen
intention of not playing.
A lot less of Xander Clark than I would have thought this season.
Absolutely.
So that's why we haven't seen Sinisalo. You'll see him on Saturday. And listen, I have no qualms about throwing him in.
Do you think at that age, there's maybe in your head, once I'm out, do I get back in?
I don't know. He signed a deal again for next season to come back. As I say, I think he's done fine. There has been very little scrutiny of Kasper Schmeichel's performances this season.
I think the ball at his feet is an issue. Sometimes he's a little bit casual with the ball at his feet.
He was casual in the Old Firm game. He gave the ball away to Václav Černý, who should have scored a goal from it. I think that was just a bit like Scotland at Hampden on Sunday. That's a performance Celtic will want to draw a line under. They didn't have Trustear Scales, they didn't have McGregor, Schmeichel wasn't firing, a few other guys weren't performing.
And Rangers played out their skins.
Absolutely. So I think Celtic will come back on Saturday. I fancy them to react and beat Hearts. I fancy them to go and win a treble. And it sounds as if Ljami Sinisalo could have a big role to play in it.
Absolutely. One last thing on Schmeichel before we move on, which has been overlooked after all the fallout from it. His injury came in one of these situations where the ball's played, there's an offside, the linesman's told don't put your flag up, he gets himself injured and then the flag goes up.
How many times have you written, or we're watching games on television and it's a co-commentator uses the phrase, that's ridiculous, somebody's going to get injured. Like this, and now someone has got injured. And it could be a bad injury for Kasper Schmeichel.
Right back at the start of this role, I think Virgil van Dijk got his bad knee injury in a Merseyside derby, being clattered by a goalkeeper after the flag should have gone up, and it's a genuine worry. I think in an age where we're told that player safety is everything else, this offside rule, and I know why they do it, but it constantly puts people in danger.
At needless danger. Listen, players get injured week in, week out, of course they do. But those are injuries that are picked up in the cut and thrust of the game.
Yes.
The flag should have gone on. Kasper Schmeichel should just have picked the ball up and gone on, and ends up getting clattered and gets a nasty shoulder.
And it's a really weird rule. It's a sort of sliding doors thing, isn't it? It's like what happens if not. Anyway, we should move on for that and move across from the Celtic side of Glasgow to the Rangers side, where the Rangers are currently looking at lifetime bans, we're told, for fans involved in the banner escapades against Fenerbahce, the woke foreign ideologies banner. Now, first of all,
I'd have banned them because I didn't understand it.
I didn't understand. Now, and here's the thing, I was away last week and I kept waiting for somebody somewhere is going to come out and say, this is what this banner meant, this is what it represented, this is why they did it. Instead, you're left to kind of go, well, apparently it's bad, and Uefa think it's bad, and Rangers think it's bad, but I'm not saying it's not. But I don't know what the provenance of this banner is.
Never do I. But the bottom line is, UEFA don't like it, Rangers don't like it. So that's good enough for me. UEFA have now told Rangers they will close the Courtland Road stand. If there's any more problems, that includes illicit songs, as Rangers said yesterday. Now, it suddenly dawned on me yesterday, Rangers are about to play at Athletic Bilbao in the quarter-final of the Europa League. If there is a repeat of any of this nonsense in the home leg, the first leg against Bilbao, say Rangers get through, Rangers could have a semi-final against Manchester United.
With no Courtland Road?
With no Courtland Road. Now, that is bad from a financial point of view from Rangers. It's bad from a reputational point of view from Rangers. It sends out a dreadful image of Scottish football around the world. And it doesn't help Barry Ferguson and the team.
Not in the least.
As they take on Manchester United.
Can I make 2 points on this, please? First one is, Rangers, and if we were talking about Celtic with their similar ultras group, have created this situation, right? If you say we need these people to create an atmosphere, and you clear people out of that Copeland Road stand to make a big space where they can be, then you leave yourself open to them becoming self-entitled and doing whatever they think.
Yeah.
Right? That's what, and it's the same with Celtic and the Green Brigade. You create a monster.
They've got out of hand.
Absolutely. And the genie's out the bottle, and they're now doing exactly what they want. They will get, if Rangers only got 300 tickets for the next Old Firm game at Parkhead, they would be the 300.
Well,
that's the way it seems to be working.
You say that, but I was actually, the Rangers statement yesterday, off the back of a previous Rangers statement, it does look as if, and I don't know whether it's a change of tact, a change of policy, because it's now Fraser Thornton and Patrick Stewart calling the shots, but they do seem intent on closing this down as best they can.
Yes.
They've lost tickets for the next Premier Sports Cup tie at Hampden.
Yeah.
They said yesterday it'll be those ultras with the pyros who don't get the tickets.
There's my thing. I wrote in a column after the SPFL announcement on the Premier Sports Cup, League Cup, semi-finals next year, games at Hampden next season, that it only worked if it was the people responsible and not just 500 tickets taken away. It has to be, and it's very easy to identify because they all dress the same, they all stand in the same, so you know exactly who they are, etc., etc. Now, balaclavas and all that notwithstanding, they can get in there and know, right? People know who the group are. So Rangers have this very difficult job, but it's a simple job, but it's a difficult job if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same idea as you say to the police and stewards, why don't you just go in and take stuff off them? Because it's going to cause more problems, and there will be ripples from this. Yeah. But it has to be done because it is getting out of hand, and it worries me that very soon at a Rangers Celtic game in particular, there's going to be an incident that is going to really bring the game into disrepute.
Well, I mean, the Rangers fans were back at Celtic Park, if you recall, for the 3-2 game a couple of weeks ago. There were very strong policing measures outside the stadium. You may have heard.
Yeah, I did. Somebody did tell me that.
I would imagine the police would be as strong when Celtic supporters come to Ibrox after the split. And I get the impression, certainly from the statement from Rangers yesterday, that the Ibrox hierarchy are growing a bit tired of this element of the support.
Yes. As they
should. As well as the suspended ban, what sort of disappears on the radar? It's another £40,000 in fines.
Yeah.
Now, the last time I checked, Rangers weren't awash with money. They might be when the Americans come in. But
do you think the Americans are going to want this? Is this what they want to be seen when they're selling TV deals across the States?
When you're sitting watching the San Francisco 49ers against the LA Rams on a Sunday night, you don't have anything like this.
No, you don't.
So, no, they won't like this.
My second point in this, however, is Rangers have suddenly got very virtue signalling on a very vague anti-woke banner saying that it brings down the reputation of the club. But Rangers, and again, if this was Celtic, as you know, I'm very even-handed in these things, Rangers have stood by for decades and listened every Saturday, every Wednesday to sectarian chanting and politicised chanting, whatever you want to call it, without ever batting an eyelid. And I wonder why now, and I'm guessing it's because Uefa are about to close the Copeland Road, they have suddenly decided that it's an outrage. Yeah,
the phrase illicit songs, I think, was mentioned in the statement yesterday. You do wonder if, well, clearly they're not happy at the threat of the Copeland Road being closed. They're not happy at the financial sanctions are continually being hit with. But, as was discussed a minute ago, I think the likes of Patrick Stewart and Fraser Thornton, new as they are to this environment, must be thinking what the 49ers thinking. You know,
that's exactly right.
Andrew Kavanagh's been here. Andrew Kavanagh was at Celtic Park. Andrew Kavanagh's been at Ibrox. What does he think of this? You know, does this
impact?
Yeah, does it impact his thinking? And I don't think it'll impact the deal taking place. Far from it, the deal will take place. But I just wonder when the 49ers are in charge and are calling the shots, whether there will be a far harder stance from the club on this type of thing, Bill.
I think there will have to be, if they want to. The 49ers aren't taking over Rangers as Rangers men.
No.
Right? They're taking over the club as businessmen.
Yes.
And businesswomen.
Yes.
And they will be looking to sell Rangers as a global entity.
Yep.
And they can't sell Rangers as a global entity if the Rangers support are picking on anybody who isn't of their faith or of their culture. And that's what Rangers have stood by and Celtic stand by as well. Celtic do nothing about their fans either. They've done nothing about it for decades, and now it's become a thing suddenly because UEFA and the 49ers are round about them. Yeah. And I find it very duplicitous.
I think it'll be interesting going forward. I think it will be interesting to go forward.
That's a very nice way of putting it.
To see the changing stance from the club, because clearly there is a change of stance coming.
And you know what? I've written about this tirelessly for decades now, and people say, "Oh, you'll never change it. You'll never change it." And I think change. Anybody who says things can't change in life are stunting their own growth. Things have to change. Yeah. And I've always said, probably naively, how magnificent would it be to be at a Rangers Celtic game with the same noise and passion and enmity towards each other in a football sense, but where all the songs were about Jimmy Johnson or Jim Baxter or we've won 119, we've won 118, rather than about all the guff that we have to listen to every time. What if they had a rivalry that people could say, "Oh, I genuinely would love to be part of that."
Yeah. And they go to Dens Park on Saturday night. A game of football will break out. It seems a long time actually since that Old Firm win. You've just been international double-header. It seems
the international breaks feel very long now, don't they?
They do, and it's actually. Listen, I know I get easily excited, Bill, but I'm quite excited by the weekend's cards. Celtic Hearts, always a great game of football.
Yes. A big test for Celtic.
A big test for Celtic. I think they'll win it. Dundee, off the back of scoring 4 at Tannadice, the first win at Tannadice in 21 years. Terrific. They'll be ready for Rangers at 5:30. Rangers stumbled at Dens this time last year. They will surely be buoyed by the win at Celtic Park. Czerny's gone and scored for his country. Hadji's gone and scored for his country. Igaman, I think his first cap. Raskin was man in the match for Belgium. So they will all come back fueled and ready to go. And that's a good game. And right through the Premiership card all weekend. Good games.
I'm looking forward to it, but with having the joy of a weekend off, I've got to see my boys. So when they're playing Kilmarnock, and what's a big
game.
Everybody's got big games at the moment because I'm not a fan of the split. Yeah. But as you come down to the split, you can't help but getting drawn in by the fact that everybody is shuffling and changing, and it's concertina, and then it's stretching back out, and so many teams still have an opportunity. Yeah. To do things.
You know the best thing about finishing 6th? Yeah. You can't get down. And that's what these clubs. I still remember the season Hibs went down on the last day before the split. Yeah. They were fighting for 6th place.
Absolutely.
They didn't get 6th and
they
then crashed.
Plummeted.
And they went down. And that will be the worry for you touching Derek McInnes. You're going to see him on Saturday. Yeah. Derek McInnes will be worried about that. Still, he'll be looking over his shoulder. Stephen Robinson as well. Don Cowie at County. Tony Docherty at Dundee. They'll all be worried. Whoever gets 6th. Yeah. What a relief.
And yet Kilmarnock, I was looking at results, and can just about still do Europe.
Yeah.
Or they could be bottom, or they could be 14. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
I don't think. I think the last game before the splits, maybe Motherwell Hearts.
Yeah.
I think one of those teams will probably get 6th place.
Probably.
I think St Mirren. It's a big ask for you, even with a win against Killie at the weekend. I think it's a big ask. Below that, your counties, Killies, Dundees. All they'll want to do is finish 10th.
Do you know though, you say, the best thing about finishing 6th is you can't go down. I also think that in itself is a bad reflection on our league and how devastating it can be just to lose the odd point here and there. There's no breathing space in this league. Yeah. People say it makes it more competitive, but I think it has reduced the quality. And again, we mentioned earlier on.
I know what you mean.
I'm very much in the David Martindale camp of, and I have been for many, many years, of let's get a few more teams into the league. Let's let people breathe. Let's allow teams to give the James Wilsons of the world more of an opportunity to come through. It's too much. It's too much.
But they wouldn't. I still don't think they would.
I don't think so?
Yeah, I don't think they would, because there would be something else to chase. They'd be chasing 11th or they'd be chasing 9th or something. I think what we've got in Scottish football. I think works. I quite like the 12-team top flight with the split. I think it's worked for years. It creates a little bit of excitement at this time of year. So Mirren Kilmarnock, suddenly a good game. Killie getting that point against Hibs with Fraser Murray in the 90-something minute. Yeah. That could be the point that keeps Kilmarnock up. Yeah. And I quite like it. And as we say, big games we've got on Sunday. Ross County, Dundee United. Yeah. United will need points now after that Derby defeat just to cement themselves in that top 6. Aberdeen, Motherwell, teams going for things.
Dundee United have had such a good season where they've punched above their weight. They'll be glad now they get so many points in the bag, because they've just had that one of those little spells where it's not quite happening for them. And Dundee, I was quite taken aback by at one point, they had goal disallowed to go 4-1 up, and it really was one of these games where they just exploded out the traps. Dundee it was quite similar actually to we had been at Celtic Rangers earlier on, where the away team comes out and just takes the home by absolute storm. What about yourself? Where are you at the weekend?
Well, the Premiership card's so good. I'm going to the Championship. I've looked out my tin hat and my body armour. I'm going to Brunei versus Lenny in the Championship.
Oh, fantastic!
A fantastic game. Neil Lennon back in charge of Dunfermline at least until the end of the
what's
season.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on Dunfermline. I saw them against Wraith, the derby on a Friday night. Absolutely dismal. They've been taken over by an American. Made his money through gambling called James Boyd. I'm not sure.
James Boyd.
Well, I'm not sure he saw eye to eye. And Michael Tidzer's 60 days in charge.
No.
Neil Lennon made it clear yesterday he will be making the decisions in terms of football. I hope that's the case.
Yep.
It's great to have Lenny back. We can't have enough characters. He's a manager with a great record. He's won, I think, 10 trophies with Celtic.
Yeah.
He won a title with Hibs in the Championship. He won a cup with Omonia in Cyprus. He knows what he's doing. It's great to have him back in the game. I think Dunfermline will be an eye-opener for him.
No doubt about that.
Saturday will be a big game. Here I've taken 1 point from 9. This is Brunei's toughest spell in charge as well. I can't wait. I think it'll be great.
But again, I think they're probably punched above their weight for a lot of the season. I think they exceeded expectations. And they've maybe now just hit that bit where you think, is this, it's third? Do we regroup now and go for the playoffs and see how we, obviously finishing second makes a big difference when finishing third.
A quick message to Brendan Rodgers in light of Kasper Schmeichel's injury. Please don't bring Josh Clark back from Man United. Brunei's taken long enough to find a goalkeeper this season. Don't bring him back. He'll need him.
Is he the fifth? He's the fifth goalkeeper of the season, isn't he?
I think the fifth goalie.
Fifth goal. I think the last time I checked,
Stone, McIntyre, Much,
I think
Clark. And
there's a fifth one.
There is a fifth one.
Who played one game. Oh no.
Russell.
So, I think at the last count he had changed his goalkeeper 14 times this season.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable that he's just, and he had the same kind of thing at Fleetwood.
He did, yeah.
Where he was shuffling. He's obviously just not a fan of the goalkeeper.
Well, listen.
However, that's going to be a cracking game. It's great to see Neil Lennon back in football. I think he should be managed, with all respect to the film, he should still be managed at a higher level.
Of course he should.
Maybe this will be his launch pad to get back in. I also think he is a loss to broadcasting. So I think as a pundit he has been tremendous. I think his insight in games on BT has been fantastic. So I think
football people like being in football.
Oh, of course, and they always think, I know the last 7 managers have all been thrown out in the scrap heap, but I'm the one that will sort this out. They always think they're the one that's got the magic bullet to sort it out.
I quite like that.
So they are.
I quite like that. And go in. And listen, we wish Lenny well after Saturday.
Of course, Mr. Ian United giving his colours.
After Saturday.
After Saturday. Wherever you're going this weekend, have fun, behave, enjoy your football. And from Roger and from myself, we'll see you next time.